guys, and welcome back to another video. I've had so many questions recently, I guess because so many of you have started at university, and they're all kind of about how to take notes, how to structure notes, how to read an article or a textbook and know what to take out of it and put that into your notes, and how it's all going to be useful for later on for revision and exams. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to split it into 3 sections. So the first section is about seminar and lecture notes, how to structure them, what to include when you're in seminars and lectures, and how to basically lay them out. The second portion is, I guess, law specific, and it's kind of the same thing but for how to structure and set out cases and statute law. And then the third section is about articles and textbooks, and it essentially is basically giving my advice on how to read sources and how to research and what to take out of those sources and how to put those into your notes. Basically what to include from your sources. I'm gonna share my screen and basically show you how I structure my notes. So the first section, seminar notes, lecture notes. My top tips for this is colours and basically keeping consistency for the whole year. So basically the way I do it is that I use the hyperlink system on Microsoft Word. You can also do this on Google Docs. I basically write down like week 1, whatever the topic is, and then I have sections. So I break it up by reading notes, seminar notes, lecture notes. But then under each section, I basically use the same format for everything for the whole year. So I use black bold, which is the source that I've got like the thing from, whether it's like a lecture title or a time in that lecture or, you know, seminar reading, things like that. Then I will have a direct quote or the gist of a quote in just like normal black, and then I have my own thoughts in red, and then any questions like seminar questions and things to stand them out, I put those in blue. So when I scroll through my notes, because obviously at the end of the term they can get quite, you know, long, like 30, 40, 50 pages. I can scroll through each week and see what my thoughts are, what the actual, you know, quotes are from the literature that I read, and also what the questions they asked me that week were. So that's kind of how I use colours to structure my notes, and also, as I said, I use the hyperlinking system because that also creates a contents page at the top of your document. So if you want to find something specific for a certain week, or, you know, if you come to an essay and you want to find a certain source that you know you did in like week 6, it's easy to find and you don't have to like scroll through all your notes. My final kind of tip is kind of just reference as you go. Like if I'm doing seminar reading or someone says something in a seminar and you write it down, I sort of, if they're recorded, especially now, you know, with the pandemic and lectures are recorded, I write down what time it was said at. Or if someone mentions like a book and then they talk about that, I write down what the book was, just so when you come to look at your notes when you're writing essays or doing exams, you know where the information was from, and it's then easier for you to then go back and do further research. So now for cases and statutes. So basically I use a table system in a Word document. Basically simple, but I find that structuring it in a table and then using colours to determine the difference between cases and statute, basically show in my notes, this is a case, this is statute, and it's easier for me to see, especially when I'm in a seminar. If you just have a table that separates each section of the case up, if they're asking you, okay, what was the ratio in that case, what was decided, what was the principle, I can go to a little section in my notes, it's easy to find. So basically the way I structure my case notes and my reading for cases is I will have the case citation at the top, then I have the facts overview, which is basically, you know, normally 3 or 4 sentences about what happened in that case. If I can, I'm trying to make it as succinct and as easy to understand and memorise as possible. Then I have the ratio, which is the decision made. At the top of the ratio, I always have the overall decision, whether it was held or appeal granted or application granted. And then I go on to say what like the decision was and what the principle was in law. And then sometimes I have an obiter dictum, like follow-on section, which is basically any interesting comments that were made in the case that I think are worth talking about in the seminar or might be an interesting discussion point for essays. I put them in, and as I said, I reference everything as I go. As you can see there, I have like the paragraph numbers for where things were said. I pretty much do the same process for statute. Instead, I kind of break it up by section. So as you can see here, this is the Mental Capacity Act 2005 as an example. So I have the section, so section 1.2, what it says, but I don't do direct quotes. I basically just summarise what was said in my words, because you know yourself, if you read statute, it's very wordy and it's like hard to kind of get your head around and repeat and memorise, so I kind of just put it in my own words. And then I have a final sort of column that's all for the summary of what that was about. So as you can see here, section 1.2 is about a person must be assumed to have capacity unless they like think that they lack it, and then the summary of that is it's the presumption of capacity. I can go down that final column and see like what the section is about, and I can also break it up by section, and I do it in chronological order because it's easier to follow that way. And then finally, my tips for reading sources, namely articles and textbooks, and what to include, what to take out of them. So my general tips on this is reference as you go, always, always, always important. Before I even open up a source to read it, I will type in the reference. So that means that when I'm reading and going through, I can automatically just transfer it straight into my notes. I always have two documents on my screen. One will be my Word document for that class, and one will be the actual document that I've got to read, so I can kind of like constantly flick back and forth. I find that's easier. Now what I want to do is I want to take you into a textbook document and show you how I would read it. So before we jump in, my main advice on this topic is that you never read something to just read it. You're not reading for the sake of reading, you're reading with a purpose. Now that purpose is basically, what do you want to know? You might sit there and think, well, I don't know what I want to know, but you can decipher that from what you've been given by your lecturers. So the purpose will be either seminar questions that you've been given or an essay question that you've been given. So for example, this chapter that I'm going to use as an example is based on informed consent, and one of the questions you might want an answer to is, what is informed consent? So as I'm reading this chapter, I'm thinking, what is the information that's going to help me to answer that question? You know, you don't want any of the fluffy, you know, interesting bits that are going to be mentioned in the textbook. You just want like the solid answer. What is the law? What is it? And that's kind of my advice, is you just read with a purpose. You read knowing that you want to find a certain bit of information, so you can kind of skim read, and you read a lot faster that way. And equally, it means you don't have pages and pages and pages of notes. You just have like particular notes that are directly relevant to what you're researching. The way I actually read it is I just skim and go through it and then highlight bits in a PDF, because I much prefer doing it online. You can control F and skim read that way rather than having an actual book. In my undergrad I had a book and I've learned that lesson. It's easier to just do it online. So anyway, so I go through the PDF, and bits that I think are important I highlight, and then I read the whole thing before I transfer those highlighted bits into my Word document, because sometimes there'll be bits that I've highlighted 3 or 4 times that are like repeated, so if I put them all in as I went, my notes would be a lot longer than they needed to be. But that pretty much concludes this video. Really, I just hope this helps you kind of know a bit more about how structure can be helpful for, you know, later down the line when you're studying, doing essays and doing exams, and also how helpful it can be just when you're in seminars. If you have a consistent structure and you know what's where in your notes, and you know how easy it can be to find things via like colours or hyperlinks, when someone asks you something in class, you can just go straight to it and you don't have to like faff around in your notes. So I just find like having the consistency of colours and keeping it like the same all the time basically just enables me to like perform better on my course. So I hope you guys found this video interesting, and I will see you in the next one. I will see you next time. Bye guys.